Hi, it's Kim Boon. Let's deep dive into news that matters to Singapore. Today, let's talk about the ACRA NRIC saga that has been hitting the news this week. I don't know about you, but the whole thing was really confusing. There was something about miscommunication, you had people pointing fingers, so I got into all of it and let's talk about what happened. So, if your friend asked you to send a picture of your NRIC, would you feel comfortable doing that? So, a couple of reasons why you're not, I'm guessing. For millennials, you may be concerned that the first two digits of your NRIC essentially reveals your age. You probably also feel really uncomfortable generally that someone knows your full name and your full NRIC number, but you're not really sure why. So it turns out the whole NRIC saga really started because the government was trying to shift the public's thinking about NRIC, that we should start getting comfortable with our full NRIC as our unique identifier in the spirit of transparency. And the problem with that is that this education has not happened fast enough, and while the public is largely unaware, it has confused the parts of the civil service. So this confusion played out between the Ministry of Digital Development and Information, MDDI, and ACRA sometime in July 2024.
The panel found that a confluence of several shortcomings on the part of both MDDI and ACRA and how they had interacted with each other on the issue led to the incident.
So during that time, MDDI issued a memo to all agencies telling them to stop using partial NRIC. So in two cases. So the first, when sharing information with each other, and second, for any new processes or products. So let's think about that for a second. Imagine you're working for a company. You make a search engine product, and your boss tells you to stop using partial NRIC in your product. So what's your first instinct? Well, since partial NRIC seems to be a bad thing now, I could think, so even showing the last three digits and alphabet is now sensitive. Okay, let me remove NRICs completely. Alternatively, you could think that, partial NRICs cannot be used. And I remember my boss telling me that we should be more transparent. Okay, let me use full NRIC then. So now for ACRA, a couple of months before the memo from MDDI, they took a look at their people search documents. So this is something that people can search for in BizFile, which is a public corporate portal. You make a payment and then you get a document that shows relevant details of a company. So that includes directors, key officers, and their details. So ACRA originally proposed to include partial NRIC in this document, but eventually they decided to use full NRIC after feedback from MDDI and users. So this makes sense because first, this is in line with the push towards corporate transparency. Also, this information is not readily available. You got to pay a nominal amount before you have access to it. So you could say that this was fit for purpose. Okay, so normally for government registries like BizFile, there is also usually a search function that gives viewers kind of like a sneak preview on what's available in the documents that we just talked about. Naturally, these search functions tend to show less. So it's a bit like a movie trailer where it shows you all the big moments in the show. Then you decide whether the show is for you or not, and then you can buy it. So of course for BizFile, ACRA being the owner, they have to decide how much of the movie to tease, so to speak. So this was where everything fell apart. So you remember how MDDI said to remove the use of partial NRICs in new projects and processes? So ACRA treated this search function as new, which was mistake number one. Mistake number two, because of that, they went on to interpret that not using partial NRIC meant using full NRIC. And this was also probably due to the fact that they implemented that in the paywall version of the people search document. So then the disaster was locked in around August 2024 when ACRA instructed their IT vendor to proceed with full NRIC. So the new search function went live on the 9th of December last year. So then public concerns started mounting on the 12th of December before the portal was disabled on the 13th of December. So now that you know what happened, let's talk about what went wrong. First, there was a horrible communication breakdown all around.
For such complex use cases, additional guidance from MDDI would have helped agencies decide whether disclosing full NRIC numbers was necessary, and if so, determine what safeguards should be put in place.
You know how sometimes someone tries to explain to you something and you have absolutely no idea what they're talking about? I think generally speaking, the onus is on the person explaining to ensure that their audience understands what they are saying, because they are the ones that understand and the audience does not know what they don't know. So in this case, communication between MDDI and ACRA created doubts on whether to use no or full NRIC. So in the broader sense, MDDI gave a one-size-fits-all directive that did not take into account more complex cases like BizFile. But to be fair, MDDI did try to clarify their memo with a briefing after it was released. And this time, the communication breakdown happened within ACRA. The working level that attended the briefing did not share the information with senior leaders or project leads.
Nonetheless, even if ACRA was under the mistaken impression that the July 2024 CM required them to disclose full NRIC numbers in People's Search, ACRA ought to still have, as required by IM8, assess the proper balance between the public interest in sharing full NRIC numbers, which was to promote corporate transparency, and the competing public interest in ensuring that full NRIC numbers were not too readily accessible.
So let's unpack this part. Not being told does not negate your responsibility as leaders. It is important to consider the nuance with this. If you as a leader asked and you're not told, then the onus is on you to push for an answer before you make a decision. If you didn't ask and you're not told, the onus is still on you to know before you make a decision. And in this case, if there were doubts at all on how to proceed, I would think that questions needed to be raised and answered before deciding anything. And that's why leaders are paid the big bucks, to ask the right questions and to steer the mothership in the right direction. So one of the other things that caught my eye was that ACRA only requested a security review by the Government Technology Agency after launching.
After displaying the People's Search function, ACRA requested that the Government Technology Agency review the security features of the People's Search function. So this was after the fact, after the People's Search function had already been launched.
I mean, shouldn't this be before launch? This is a registry containing citizen information, corporate information, pretty important stuff, I would think. And in their review, the feedback was that the search function lacked certain security functions like the CAPTCHA. So you know the thing where they get you to select pictures that look like buses or goats before they give you access to the website. So this was one of the key reasons why bad actors could scrap the data off the search engine using automated scripts, which by the way are not at all complicated to make. I mean, even someone like me with basic programming skills can probably do it. So given this, it is even more surprising that despite this obvious security flaw being highlighted, the search engine continued to be live. So public concerns mounted on the 12th of December last year. So given the nature of the problem was a technology one, and things move in seconds and in minutes, a day is like an eternity in the digital space.
The review found that some security features, including the CAPTCHA functionality, were not adequately implemented, allowing potential data retrieval using scripts from the 9th to the 13th of December 2024.
So in this case, it took a day before the portal was disabled. Across the 5 days since launch until shutdown, more than 500,000 searches were made from the search function. So keeping in mind that the usual search volume was around tens of thousands. Again, due to the lack of security safeguards. So scrap bots out there have successfully downloaded all the data, and once it's out there in the World Wide Web, it is probably there forever. So let's think about the implications. What could bad actors do with your name at NRIC, for example? So while scams have gotten increasingly sophisticated, I think many are still quite simple. So they can claim that you won like $1,000 from NTUC or something, but then they misspell your name, they get your first and last name in the wrong order, things like that. So now imagine these simple bad guys, they got a hold of your full NRIC. Now the same scam email or phone call will be that much more convincing because they can actually tell you your NRIC number. And a victim could remember vaguely that, yeah, I filled up this NTUC lucky draw some time ago, which by the way is not uncommon at all, and think that the scam is real. So of course this is a very simplified example, but I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. So at this point, the government has released its findings. The relevant ministers and permanent secretaries, senior management and staff will be dealt with accordingly. So I'll just say this. The focus on understanding the problem and preventing it from happening again is good. I think ultimately the buck has to end somewhere. Everyone will have an opinion of whether the buck has gone up far enough and attributed correctly. But I'm not going to get into that in this video. But you, the viewer, I'm sure you have your thoughts on this for sure. So let us know what you think in the comments below. So until next time, this is a Red Dot Perspective.